In 1888, an Egyptian farmer digging in the desert near the village of Istanbul struck something that wasn't stone. It was a tomb, but when archaeologists opened it, they found no pharaoh, no gold, no jewels. They found a necropolis of the dead, an army of mummies stretching into the darkness. 80,000 of them, not human, they were cats. A few years later, another tomb was found. This one contained over 300,000, an entire city, built to house the mummified remains of cats. For decades, this discovery was treated as a bizarre curiosity. The mummies were ground into fertilizer, shipped to England by the ton. But they missed the point. They failed to ask the one question that changes everything. Why would a civilization as advanced as ancient Egypt spend this much wealth, this much effort, to mummify hundreds of thousands of house cats? What secret did they know about these animals that we have forgotten? They weren't just pets. They were vessels. Conduits for a power so immense, the Egyptians believed it could protect their homes from evil spirits, grant them good fortune, and even guard the soul of the pharaoh himself in the afterlife. This power had a name, Bastet, the cat goddess. But she is not what you think she is. We see her as a gentle, graceful deity of the home. That is only half the truth. And the other half is terrifying. Because before she was the protector, she was the destroyer. And deep within her hidden city, the priests of her cult performed a secret ritual. A ceremony so potent and so dangerous, it was said to channel her original divine rage. A ritual that could turn a goddess of protection back into a goddess of annihilation. What was that ritual? And why did the most powerful people in Egypt both fear and desperately need it? To find that answer, we have to go back to the beginning. Back to a time when the gods walked the earth, and humanity had just committed its greatest sin. The sun god, Ra, the king of all creation, was growing old. His human subjects, seeing his weakness, began to plot against him. They mocked his name, they disobeyed his laws, and they forgot the divine order that held the universe together. Their disrespect festered, growing into a rebellion that threatened to unravel reality itself. Enraged, Ra summoned the gods. He needed a weapon, an instrument of vengeance so absolute it would remind humanity of the price of defiance. He looked upon his daughter, the fierce lioness goddess Sekhmet, the most powerful and terrifying of all his children. Her breath was the desert wind, her roar was the thunder, and her eyes burned with the fire of the sun. Ra commanded her to descend upon the mortal world and unleash his judgment. Sekhmet became the personification of his rage, the divine nuclear option. She fell upon the Nile Delta not as a queen but as a plague, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. She tore through villages, her fury insatiable. The guilty and the innocent fell before her. The fields ran red, and the Nile itself, the lifeblood of Egypt, was said to choke on the blood of the slain. Her slaughter was so vast, so complete, it threatened to unmake creation. The other gods watched in horror. This was not justice. This was an extinction. They pleaded with Ra to call her off, but he couldn't. He had unleashed a power that was now beyond his control. Sekhmet was lost in a frenzy of bloodlust, addicted to the slaughter. She would not stop until every last human was wiped from the face of the earth. Ra knew he had made a terrible mistake. He had to stop her. But how do you stop a goddess who is the living embodiment of your own divine fury? He couldn't fight her. He had to trick her. He devised a desperate, brilliant plan. He ordered his priests to brew a colossal amount of beer, 7,000 jars of it. But this was no ordinary offering. He commanded them to mix the beer with red ochre and pomegranate juice, dyeing it a deep, crimson red until it looked exactly like human blood. As the sun set, while Sekhmet rested from her day of carnage, planning to continue her rampage at dawn, Ra's servants poured the blood-red beer across the fields where she would begin her next attack. When the sun rose, Sekhmet awoke, her thirst for destruction raging. She saw the fields, flooded with what she believed was an ocean of blood left over from her massacre. It was a sight that delighted her. She stormed towards it, eager to continue her work, and began to drink. She drank and she drank, the sheer volume of the blood intoxicating her. The powerful goddess, the destroyer of worlds, became drunk. Her rage subsided, her bloodlust was quenched, and the mighty lioness fell into a deep, profound sleep. When she finally awoke, the world was quiet. The rage was gone. The divine fire in her eyes had cooled. She was transformed. The raw, untamed violence had been pacified, transmuted into something new. She was no longer Sekhmet, the Lady of Slaughter. She was now Bastet, the Lady of Joy, Music, and Protection. The lioness had become the cat. This transformation is the single most important secret to understanding ancient Egypt. It's the key to everything. The Egyptians understood that Bastet was not simply a gentle goddess. She was a reformed destroyer. Her capacity for peace was so profound precisely because it was born from an infinite capacity for violence. She wasn't a protector because she was weak. She was a protector because she had chosen not to be a killer. Her gentleness was not an absence of power, but a perfect mastery of it. And this is what they saw in every single cat that roamed their temples and homes. They didn't just see a cute animal that chased mice. They saw a domesticated predator. They saw a tiny living echo of the great goddess Sekhmet, a dormant lioness sleeping within the heart of a house cat. They believed that every cat carried within it the dual nature of Bastet, the potential for gentle companionship, and the latent power of a terrifying guardian. A cat purring on your lap was Bastet's gift of peace and good fortune, but a cat arching its back at a shadow in the corner was Bastet's raw power, warding off unseen evils. This is why they were mummified by the hundreds of thousands. Each one was a sacred vessel, a divine protector whose spirit could guard a family even in the afterlife. They weren't just burying pets, they were deploying an army of spiritual guardians. This belief in her dual nature, this balance between creation and destruction, led to the rise of her cult and the founding of her sacred city, Bubastis, a place of legendary festivals, immense wealth, and sensual delights. But deep within the city's grand temple, hidden from the joyous crowds, the high priests of Bastet never forgot her origins. They remembered the lioness, and they developed rituals to harness that terrifying original power for purposes that went far beyond simple household protection. These were not rituals for ensuring a good harvest or finding a spouse. These were matters of state security, of cosmic balance. The priests of Bastet, in the hidden chambers of her temples, were engaged in a constant, high-stakes negotiation with a power that could just as easily annihilate Egypt as protect it. To understand this, you have to understand the place where this power was most concentrated on Earth. A city in the Nile Delta known to the Egyptians as Bast, and to the Greeks as Bubastis. The House of Bastet. Bubastis wasn't just a city with a temple in it. The entire city was the temple. It was a sprawling, living monument to the goddess, a nexus point where the veil between the mortal world and the divine was whisper-thin. The great Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt in the 5th century BC, was a man who had seen the wonders of the ancient world. He'd seen the Acropolis, the great ziggurats of Babylon. Yet, he was awestruck by the temple of Bastet at Bubastis. He wrote that while other temples might be larger or more expensive, none were more pleasing to the eye. He describes a temple made of magnificent red granite, sitting on an island in the center of the city. The city itself had been raised on massive earthworks, so the temple appeared to sit in a grand basin, allowing the people to look down upon it from all sides, as if viewing a sacred spectacle in an arena. Two deep, wide canals, lined with trees, branched off from the Nile and encircled the temple, meeting at the back, creating a shimmering protective moat. You could only enter through a single monumental gateway, flanked by towering statues. It was designed to feel like you were leaving the world of men and entering the domain of a goddess. And once a year, this entire city would erupt into what Herodotus called the most spectacular and popular festival in all of Egypt, the Festival of Bastet. It was, for all intents and purposes, the Mardi Gras of the ancient world, but on a scale that is almost impossible for us to comprehend. Hundreds of thousands of people, Herodotus claims as many as 700,000 men and women, would pile onto barges and boats, clogging the Nile for miles on their pilgrimage to Bubastis. This wasn't a solemn, silent journey. It was a riotous, floating party. He describes the boats packed with people, with the women playing castanets and the men playing flutes. As they floated past towns along the riverbank, they would pull ashore. The women on the boats would shout and jeer at the women on the shore, sometimes lifting their clothes in a ritual gesture of fertility and joyous abandon, all while singing and dancing. It was a celebration of life, of music, of wine. Herodotus notes they drank more wine at this one festival than in the rest of the year combined, and of the uninhibited joy that Bastet represented. When this massive, ecstatic flotilla finally arrived at Bubastis, the celebration reached a fever pitch. The city would swell with pilgrims making offerings, dancing in the streets, and honoring the goddess who brought them so much pleasure and good fortune. From the outside, it looked like the ultimate expression of love for a benevolent deity. But inside the red granite walls of the inner sanctum, where the public was forbidden to go, a very different kind of worship was taking place. While the sounds of revelry echoed from outside, the high priests were performing the solemn, secret rites of appeasement. They called it the pacification of the powerful one. Their goal wasn't to celebrate Bastet, the cat. It was to calm Sekhmet, the lioness, who they believed always lurked just beneath the surface. To them, the joyous festival outside wasn't just a party. It was a critical part of the ritual. The music, the dancing, the wine. It was all a massive offering of positive energy. A wave of human joy directed at the goddess to keep her happy, to keep her in her gentle feline form. But that alone wasn't enough. The priests had to perform specific, targeted rituals to ensure the lioness remained asleep. They would chant litanies for hours, their voices low and hypnotic. They would offer jars of beer, dyed red with pomegranate juice or ochre, a symbolic recreation of the beer that tricked Sekhmet into ending her rampage against humanity. They would burn specific incenses like myrrh and kifi, whose scents were believed to have a calming effect on divine beings. And most importantly, they used a special instrument, a sacred rattle called the sistrum. The sistrum was a handle with a U-shaped frame and small metal discs threaded on crossbars. When shaken, it produced a soft, continuous rattling sound, like a gentle breeze rustling through papyrus reeds. This sound was no accident. The papyrus marshes were the birthplace of Horus, a place of safety and protection from the forces of chaos. The sound of the sistrum was meant to soothe the goddess, to remind her of tranquility, to lull the savage lioness and keep the protective cat at the forefront. The high priestess, shaking the sistrum before the golden statue of Bastet, wasn't just making music. She was performing an act of cosmic tranquilization. Failure was not an option. If the rituals failed, if the goddess was not appeased, the consequences could be catastrophic. It wouldn't just mean a bad year for one family. It could mean the Nile failing to flood, leading to widespread famine. It could mean a plague sweeping through the cities, a grim echo of Sekhmet's original fury. It could mean Egypt's armies faltering in battle. The priests of Bastet saw themselves as the guardians of the nation, standing on a razor's edge between divine favor and divine annihilation. This desperate need to keep the goddess happy fueled a massive religious industry centered in Bubastis. Pilgrims, desperate for a personal connection to the goddess, wanted to leave an offering that would last forever. And the priests provided the perfect solution: a mummified cat. The idea was that the spirit of the mummified animal would act as an eternal messenger, carrying the pilgrims' prayers and wishes directly to the goddess in the afterlife. This created a demand that is staggering to contemplate. Archaeologists in the late 19th century unearthed a massive cat cemetery at Bubastis. They found not thousands, not tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands of mummified cats, packed so tightly together that they were eventually ground up and shipped to England to be used as fertilizer. An estimated 19 tons of feline mummies were sent. For a long time, it was assumed these were beloved pets, mummified after a long and happy life to join their owners in the afterlife. And some certainly were. But modern science has revealed a much darker, more industrial truth. When scientists began to X-ray these animal mummies, they made a disturbing discovery. A huge percentage of them were not old cats who had died of natural causes. They were young cats, kittens between 2 and 4 months old. And many of them showed clear evidence of a deliberately broken neck. The inescapable conclusion is that the temples of Bastet were running massive breeding operations, catteries, specifically to raise kittens for ritual sacrifice. The demand for offerings was so high that they couldn't rely on natural deaths. So they bred them by the thousands, killed them while they were still young, and mummified them to be sold to the endless stream of pilgrims. The joyous festival, the beautiful temple, the goddess of protection. It was all underpinned by a hidden industrial-scale slaughter of the very animal she personified. This wasn't just worship. It was a business, a grim transactional faith where a life was exchanged for a prayer. It forces us to ask a chilling question. Were the ancient Egyptians honoring a beloved protector, or were they paying a terrifying price, in a currency of blood and bone, to keep a monster in a cage? To understand the cage, you must first understand the monster. Because Bastet, the gentle guardian of the hearth, the purring companion in the sun, had a shadow. a terrible, all-consuming shadow that was not just a part of her, but her origin story. This other face, this primal form, was not a cat. It was a lioness, and her name was Sekhmet. If Bastet was the warmth of the sun, Sekhmet was its scorching, killing heat. If Bastet was the protector of children, Sekhmet was the bringer of plague. She was the goddess of war, of pestilence, of divine and bloody vengeance. She was known as the Lady of Slaughter, the Mistress of Dread. And the ancient Egyptians believed that Bastet was simply Sekhmet, pacified. She was the lioness after she had been fed, the rage after it had been soothed. This wasn't a simple case of a goddess with a bad temper. This was a cosmic force of annihilation held in a fragile, temporary truce. And the story of how that truce came to be is one of the most terrifying myths in all of Egyptian lore. It begins, as so many stories do, with the great sun god Ra. He had ruled for millennia, but he was growing old. His bones were like silver, his flesh like gold, and his hair the color of lapis lazuli. Humanity, his own creation, saw his frailty and began to mock him. They plotted against him, their whispers and laughter echoing up to his celestial throne. Ra, the all-powerful, would not tolerate such insolence. He summoned the gods to his secret council and laid out the betrayal. His fury was absolute. He decided humanity needed to be taught a lesson written in blood. To be his instrument of vengeance, he called upon his own eye. The eye of Ra was not a physical object, but the embodiment of his power, his fury, his raw, untamed force. He sent this eye to earth, and when it manifested, it took the form of a goddess, a lioness. It took the form of Sekhmet. She descended upon the Nile Valley not as a protector, but as a predator. The slaughter was unimaginable. She tore through villages and cities, her claws ripping flesh, her teeth snapping bone. The sands of the desert ran red, and the Nile itself became choked with the bodies of the dead. Sekhmet waded through the carnage, drunk on destruction, her roar a death rattle for mankind. She was not just punishing the guilty, she was exterminating a species. Her divine purpose had curdled into a bottomless bloodlust. Up in the heavens, the other gods watched in horror. This wasn't a lesson, it was an apocalypse. Ra himself was filled with regret. He had wanted to chastise his children, not wipe them from existence. After all, without humanity to worship them, to build their temples and make offerings, the gods themselves would wither and fade. He commanded Sekhmet to stop, but it was too late. She was lost in a crimson haze, deaf to his pleas, addicted to the kill. She would not rest until the last human heart had stopped beating. A desperate plan was hatched. They could not fight Sekhmet head-on. Her power was too immense, her rage too absolute. They had to trick her. Ra commanded the priests at Heliopolis to brew a colossal amount of beer, 7,000 jars of it. But this was no ordinary brew. He then sent messengers to the island of Elephantine to retrieve a special mineral, red ochre. The gods ground the ochre into a fine powder and mixed it into the thousands of jars of beer, staining it a deep, rich crimson. It looked exactly like human blood. Under the cover of night, as Sekhmet slept off her latest massacre, dreaming of the carnage to come, the gods poured the blood-red beer across the fields of Egypt. It pooled into a vast, shimmering lake, gleaming under the moonlight. The next morning, Sekhmet awoke, her throat parched, her hunger for death raging. She stalked out into the fields, ready to continue her genocide, but then she saw it. A lake of what she could only assume was the blood of her victims, a glorious tribute to her power. She let out a triumphant roar and fell to her knees, lapping up the intoxicating liquid. She drank and drank and drank, consuming the entire lake of beer. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The divine fury was doused by an equally divine intoxication. The great and terrible lioness goddess became hopelessly, profoundly drunk. She collapsed into a deep, dreamless sleep. When she finally awoke, the world was different. Or rather, she was different. The rage was gone. The bloodlust had vanished. The fire in her eyes had been replaced by a soft, gentle glow. The terrifying lioness, the Lady of Slaughter, was gone. And in her place, purring contentedly in the morning sun, was a cat. This was the birth of Bastet. This myth changes everything. It reframes every single act of worship we see. The Egyptians weren't just honoring a benevolent protector. They were actively participating in a continuous, high-stakes ritual to keep a monster sedated. Every prayer, every offering, every mummified cat wasn't just a gift. It was a dose of medicine. It was a desperate plea. Please stay the cat. Please don't let the lioness wake up. Think about the great festivals at Bubastis, the city of Bastet. The historian Herodotus described them as wild, drunken affairs, with hundreds of thousands of people singing, dancing, and drinking copious amounts of wine. For centuries, this was seen as simple revelry, a celebration of life and joy. But in the context of the Sekhmet myth, it takes on a much darker meaning. It wasn't just a party, it was a reenactment, a sympathetic magic on a national scale. The entire population was getting drunk to magically reinforce the drunken stupor that kept Sekhmet asleep, that kept Bastet awake. They were keeping the peace by mirroring the very act that first created it. And those cat cemeteries, those millions of carefully mummified bodies, they were no longer just tokens of affection. They were a constant physical offering, a reminder to the goddess of her preferred form. Each mummified cat was a vote for Bastet over Sekhmet. It was a weight placed on the scales of her personality, tipping it toward protector and away from destroyer. The Egyptians weren't just loving cats. They were leveraging that love as a shield against annihilation. They had seen the face of God's wrath, and they would do anything, sacrifice anything, to make sure it stayed hidden behind a gentle feline mask. This duality is the absolute key to understanding ancient Egypt's relationship with this goddess. They lived with a constant, low-level awareness that their beloved guardian of the home was also a ticking time bomb of cosmic rage. Every purr was a temporary reprieve. Every playful sweat of a paw was a reminder of the claws that could tear the world asunder. They didn't just worship Bastet, they managed her. They placated her. Because they knew in the deepest parts of their souls that if they ever failed, if their prayers ever faltered, the cat would be gone, and the lioness would return to finish the job she started. This constant, low-level fear gave rise to an entire city, a sprawling metropolis in the Nile Delta dedicated to one singular purpose: keeping the goddess happy. The city was called Bubastis, the house of Bastet. To the Greeks, who would later marvel at its wonders, it was known as Bubastis. And at its heart stood a temple so magnificent, so unique, that the great historian Herodotus, a man who had seen the wonders of the ancient world, declared it was the most beautiful he had ever laid eyes on. It wasn't the grandest temple in Egypt. It wasn't built with the same colossal scale as Karnak or Abu Simbel. It didn't scrape the sky or boast towering statues that dwarfed mortal men. Its beauty was of a different kind. Herodotus tells us the temple sat on an island, nestled low in the center of the city, so that as you walked the streets, you could always look down and see it, a jewel cradled by the metropolis. A moat fed by the Nile itself surrounded the structure, wide and shimmering, with trees dipping their branches into the cool water. It was an oasis of tranquility, a sanctuary of peace. But this design wasn't just for aesthetics. Think about it. A cat, even a divine one, doesn't want to be caged in a dark, imposing fortress. It wants a garden. It wants a place of sun and water, of gentle breezes and whispering trees. The entire temple was an enclosure designed not to imprison the goddess, but to make her want to stay. It was the most elaborate, most expensive, most spiritually significant cat sanctuary ever built. The entrance was a towering stone pylon, carved with immense figures of the goddess, but once you passed through it, you entered her world. A world of serene beauty, designed to soothe the savage beast and keep the gentle protector purring. And once a year, this serene city would erupt into the single largest, most raucous, and most debaucherous party in all of ancient Egypt. It was the festival of Bastet. Herodotus, again our wide-eyed guide, describes a scene of absolute pandemonium. From all corners of the kingdom, people would pack onto barges and begin the long, slow journey down the Nile to Bubastis. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, men and women crammed onto boats, their journey a floating festival in itself. As they drifted down the river, the party was already in full swing. The boats were filled with musicians, the air thick with the sound of pipes and the rhythmic clap of castanets. The people sang, they shouted, they danced. Herodotus notes, with a hint of shock, that as the boats passed by towns along the riverbank, the women on board would do something extraordinary. They would shout jokes and taunts at the women on the shore, and then in a gesture of wild ritualistic abandon, they would lift up their tunics, exposing themselves to the crowds. This wasn't seen as lewd or shameful. It was a ritual act, a display of life and fertility, a thumbing of the nose at the forces of chaos and death, all done in the name of the goddess. The entire journey was fueled by wine. Herodotus claims, and he sounds almost breathless writing it, that more grape wine was consumed during this single festival than in the entire rest of the year combined. Imagine that. The Nile, the lifeblood of Egypt, transformed into a highway of drunken revelry, a massive floating procession of joy and chaos, all converging on the holy city of Bubastis. When they finally arrived, the city would swell to bursting. The official number Herodotus gives is 700,000 people, not counting children. 700,000 pilgrims, all there to honor the cat goddess. The celebrations would spill out from the temple and into every street and alleyway. The sacrifices and offerings were immense. The feasting, the drinking, the music, it was a spectacle of sensory overload. This wasn't a somber religious ceremony. This was the ancient world's Mardi Gras. Its Burning Man, its Super Bowl, all rolled into one. It was a national pressure valve, a moment where the strict rules of Egyptian society were temporarily suspended, and for a few glorious wine-soaked days, everyone could let loose under the watchful, approving eyes of their feline protector. But why? Why this level of extreme celebration? Because it was part of the deal. It was the ultimate act of appeasement. It was the Egyptian people shouting, in one collective deafening voice, "We love you. We adore you. Please stay the gentle cat. Please don't become the lioness." Every sip of wine, every note of music, every wild dance was another prayer. Another brick in the wall holding back the tide of divine wrath. They were literally partying to save the world. And at the center of all this, in the quiet, sun-dappled courtyards of the temple, lived the true stars of the show, the cats. These were not ordinary animals. They were believed to be the living incarnations of Bastet's spirit, her being on earth. They were pampered beyond belief, fed the finest fish, milk, and bread. They were cared for by a dedicated order of priests whose sole job was to attend to their every need. To harm one of these cats, even accidentally, was a crime of the highest order. The Greek historian Diodorus Siculus tells a chilling story of a Roman official who, during a visit to Egypt, accidentally killed a cat. Despite the pleas of King Ptolemy himself, who feared Roman retaliation, the Egyptian people formed a mob, dragged the man from his house, and tore him to pieces. Nothing could save him. The life of a single sacred cat was more valuable than political alliances, more important than the threat of a superpower's wrath. This reverence went beyond just the temple cats. Throughout Egypt, cats were beloved members of the family. When a household cat died, the family would go into deep mourning. They would shave their eyebrows as a sign of respect and grief, a practice they would continue until their eyebrows grew back. The deceased cat was then given the same funerary rites as a human. It would be carefully embalmed, wrapped in linen bandages, sometimes with intricate patterns, and its face covered with a beautifully crafted mask. It was then placed in a small wooden or bronze sarcophagus and laid to rest in a dedicated cat cemetery. This might sound like a touching, if extreme display of affection for a pet, but what archaeologists would later uncover in and around Bubastis revealed something far more complex, something on an industrial scale. This wasn't just about mourning beloved family pets. In the temple complex, priests presided over massive catteras, vast breeding programs for the sole purpose of producing sacred animals. Pilgrims who traveled to the festival would purchase a cat mummy as an offering to the goddess, a physical manifestation of their prayer. It was a booming business, and as the centuries wore on, the demand became insatiable. The priests needed more cats, and more, and more. The supply had to meet the demand of hundreds of thousands of faithful pilgrims, and the methods they used to ensure a steady stream of these sacred offerings were far from the gentle, peaceful image of a goddess purring in the sun. They were building an empire of devotion, one tiny mummified body at a time. This wasn't just a handful of beloved pets being laid to rest. This was an industry, a vast, sprawling, and frankly disturbing enterprise dedicated to fulfilling a divine demand. To truly understand the scale of what was happening at Bubastis and other cult centers, we have to travel forward in time to the year 1888. An Egyptian farmer, digging in the sand near the village of Istanbul, struck something hard. It wasn't rock. It was a tomb, but not for a pharaoh. It was a catacomb, a massive pit packed to the brim with the mummified remains of cats. And when I say packed, I mean it. He had uncovered a cemetery containing an estimated 80,000 feline mummies. So many, in fact, that they were seen as having little archaeological value at the time. A shipping company bought the entire lot, tens of tons of them, for a pittance. They were shipped to Liverpool, England, where they were ground into powder and sold as fertilizer to spread across the fields of the British countryside. 19 tons of sacred, mummified cats, offerings to a goddess, ended their journey as phosphate for English farmers. Imagine that. A prayer whispered thousands of years ago in the Egyptian heat, ending up as dust in the cold English soil. This single gruesome discovery pulls back the curtain on the true nature of Bastet's worship in the late period. The pilgrims flocking to Bubastis weren't all bringing their deceased family pets for a blessed burial. The vast majority were participating in a completely different kind of transaction. They were buying their offerings on site. The temples of Bastet weren't just places of worship, they were factories of faith. Think of it like this: you're an ancient Egyptian. Maybe your child is sick, or your crops are failing, or you simply want to curry favor with the powerful goddess of protection and good fortune. You make a pilgrimage to her sacred city. When you arrive, you don't present a cat you've raised from a kitten. Instead, you approach a temple stall, a marketplace of the holy, and there you purchase a votive offering, a pre-mummified cat, already wrapped and prepared. The priests would then take your offering and enter it within the sacred grounds, a physical manifestation of your prayer delivered directly to the goddess. It was a brilliant business model. The temples controlled both the supply and the divine access, and the demand was insatiable. Millions of people over hundreds of years all wanting to send their message to Bastet. To meet this demand, the temples had to get creative. And this is where the story takes a much darker turn. Where did all these cats come from? The answer, revealed by modern science, is chilling. Archaeologists and scientists have used X-rays and CT scans to peer inside these ancient linen wrappings without disturbing them. What they found wasn't a population of cats who had lived long, happy lives before being lovingly mummified. They found something that looked more like a grim production line. The vast majority of these mummified cats were very young. Many were between 2 and 4 months old. Some were even younger. They were kittens bred for a single purpose: to become an offering. The scans revealed something else. The most common cause of death wasn't old age or disease. It was a deliberately broken neck. Cervical dislocation. These kittens were being raised in massive temple-run catteras, and once they reached a certain size, they were systematically killed, mummified, and sold to the next pilgrim in line. This was animal husbandry on an industrial scale, but for ritual sacrifice. These weren't the pampered pets we see in tomb paintings, lounging on the laps of nobles. These were sacred livestock, a conveyor belt of souls, bred and dispatched to fuel the economy of devotion. The priests of Bastet were not just spiritual guides. They were the managers of a massive, vertically integrated operation that included breeding facilities, slaughterhouses, embalming workshops, and a retail division for the finished product. The level of commercialization was staggering. You could purchase different tiers of offerings. A simple, small mummified kitten might be affordable for a poor farmer. But a wealthy merchant? He could purchase a large adult cat, mummified with exquisite care, its face covered with a gilded mask, and its body encased in an ornate wooden or bronze sarcophagus shaped like a cat. The more you paid, the bigger and better your prayer, the more likely you were to get the goddess's attention. It was a spiritual transaction reduced to a price list. And like any industry where there's big money to be made, there was fraud. The same CT scans that revealed the tragic fate of the kittens also uncovered a widespread practice of deception. Researchers unwrapping these bundles have found that a significant percentage, some studies suggest as high as 1/3, don't contain what they're supposed to. Some mummies are beautifully and elaborately wrapped, but inside there's no cat at all. Instead, there might be a few random cat bones, perhaps a skull or a leg, padded out with reeds, mud, and scraps of linen to give it the right shape and weight. Some contain nothing more than a collection of sticks. Others hold the remains of different animals entirely: an ibis feather, a shrew, even a human bone, all bundled up to look like a cat. Imagine the scene. A pilgrim full of hope and faith spends their hard-earned money on a sacred offering. They hand over their prayer, believing they have sent a powerful messenger to the divine realm. But the priest they bought it from knew it was a fake. It was a scam, perpetrated in the very shadow of the goddess's temple. It shows a level of cynicism that is truly breathtaking. The business of belief had become so profitable that cutting corners, even when dealing with the gods, was just part of the process. This wasn't a secret fringe operation. This was the mainstream. The sheer number of these fakes and partial mummies found across Egypt proves this was a common, accepted part of the industry. Perhaps the intention was what mattered. Perhaps the priests rationalized that Bastet would understand the economic realities. Or perhaps, after centuries of churning out millions of these offerings, the original reverence had been lost, replaced by the simple, cold logistics of supply and demand. So we have to ask a difficult question. How did this happen? How did the worship of Bastet, the fierce protector, the bringer of joy, the gentle mother, devolve into this? A commercialized, industrial-scale breeding and sacrifice operation, complete with forgeries and fraud. Was this a corruption of her original cult? A perversion of a once pure faith that had grown too big, too wealthy, and too powerful? Or was this darker, more transactional nature always lurking beneath the surface? Was the purr of the cat goddess always accompanied by the quiet hum of a sacrificial machine? A machine that demanded not just love and devotion, but a constant, unending supply of bodies? The answer lies in how her identity began to merge and blur with that of a much more terrifying, bloodthirsty goddess. A lioness who was the very embodiment of divine rage. Her name was Sekhmet, the powerful one, the lady of slaughter. And she was Bastet's other half, the terrifying shadow that loomed behind the gentle house cat. To understand one, you must understand the other. They were not always separate entities, but two aspects of the same divine power, a concept the Egyptians were masters of. They understood that the same sun that warms the soil and gives life can also scorch the earth and bring drought and death. The same river that floods and fertilizes the fields can also drown entire villages. And the same divine feminine power that protects the home and nurtures children could also unleash a fury that could unmake the world. The story of Sekhmet's birth is one of the most terrifying in all of Egyptian mythology. It begins with the great sun god Ra in his twilight years. He had ruled over gods and mortals for eons, but now he was old. His bones were like silver, his flesh like gold, and his hair the color of lapis lazuli. And humanity, his own creation, began to mock him. They saw his trembling hands, his stooped back, and they plotted against him, their whisper spreading like a plague through the land of Egypt. Ra the all-seeing heard their plots, his divine heart, which had burned with creative fire for millennia, now filled with a cold, simmering rage. He summoned the other gods to a secret council. He told them of humanity's betrayal, of their insolence. The gods were aghast. They told Ra, "Do not turn away from them. Your power is still greater than theirs. You need only turn your eye upon them, and they will be destroyed." The eye of Ra. This wasn't just a metaphor for his sight. It was a distinct divine entity, a being of immense power, the physical manifestation of his fury. And in this moment of ultimate betrayal, Ra unleashed it. He sent his eye in the form of the goddess Hathor down to earth to punish mankind. But as she descended, the sheer force of Ra's rage transformed her. She was no longer the gentle goddess of love and music. She became a lioness, a massive, terrifying creature of muscle and fang, her roar shaking the very foundations of the mountains. She became Sekhmet, and she began her work. What followed was not a battle, it was a slaughter. Sekhmet fell upon the plotting humans with a savagery that horrified even the gods who had advised it. She tore through villages and cities, her claws ripping flesh from bone, her teeth snapping spines. The sands of the desert turned dark and crimson, soaked with the blood of her victims. The Nile itself was set to run red. She was intoxicated by the carnage, her divine purpose twisted into an insatiable bloodlust. She was no longer just punishing the guilty. She was annihilating everything in her path. From their celestial perch, the gods watched in horror. This was not what they intended. Ra's anger had created a monster, a divine killing machine that would not stop until every last human being was wiped from the face of the earth. Ra himself was filled with regret. He had wanted to teach humanity a lesson, not erase them from existence. He called out to Sekhmet, commanding her to stop, but she was deafened by the screams of her victims and the roaring in her own ears. She could not stop. A desperate plan was hatched. Ra ordered his priests to brew a colossal amount of beer, 7,000 jars of it. Then, he had them grind red ochre from the mountains and mix it into the vats, staining the beer the color of fresh blood. Under the cover of night, as Sekhmet slept off her exhaustion, dreaming of the next day's massacre, they poured the contents of the jars across the fields where she was sure to resume her rampage. When the sun rose, Sekhmet awoke, her throat parched and her thirst for blood raging. She saw the fields flooded with what she believed was the blood of her enemies. It was a glorious sight. She fell to her knees and began to drink, lapping up the blood-red liquid with ferocious glee. She drank and drank, the sheer volume of the offering pleasing her immense ego. She drank until the entire field was dry, and then the alcohol hit her. The divine rage, the insatiable bloodlust, was finally quenched, not by violence, but by a divine hangover. The mighty, terrifying lioness fell into a deep, drunken slumber. Humanity was saved. When she finally awoke, her rage had subsided. The bloodlust was gone. Ra, seeing his chance, renamed her. He softened her spirit. The destructive power was still there, but it was now dormant, pacified. The lioness had been tamed, and in this new, gentler form, she could once again become the protective, nurturing goddess. She could become Bastet. This is the key. This is the secret that unlocks the entire mystery of the cat mummies. Bastet and Sekhmet were two sides of the same divine coin. Sekhmet was the raw, untamed, destructive power of the sun, a force of nature that could end the world. Bastet was that same power, but brought under control, domesticated, and turned to the purpose of protection. She was the lioness curled up on the hearth, purring. But everyone knew, everyone remembered, that the lioness was still there. The cult of Bastet wasn't just about celebrating the cute, fuzzy protector of the home. It was a nationwide, generation-spanning effort to keep Sekhmet asleep. It was a massive, ongoing ritual of appeasement. The Egyptians lived with the terrifying knowledge that the goddess who protected their children and guarded their grain had a shadow self capable of planetary extinction. And they believed that if she were ever neglected, if she were ever forgotten or angered, the purring would stop, the claws would come out, the gentle cat would once again become the raging lioness, and the slaughter would begin anew. And so the mummified cats. They weren't just tokens of affection for a beloved deity. They were a form of divine insurance. Each one of those millions of carefully wrapped bodies, placed in a sacred catacomb at her temple in Bubastis, was a prayer. It was a votive offering, a symbolic sacrifice that said, "We honor you, Great One. We remember the power that lies within you. Please stay as you are. Stay as the protector. Stay as the gentle one. We offer you this vessel, this sacred cat, so that your great and terrible anger may remain at rest." They were feeding the quiet cat to starve the roaring lioness. It was a constant, unending supply of devotion, made tangible in the form of millions of bodies, all to placate the apocalyptic rage that slept just beneath the surface of their beloved goddess. This transforms our view of Bubastis. It wasn't just a happy pilgrimage site. It was the epicenter of a national security operation, a place tasked with maintaining the cosmic balance between creation and total annihilation. But this raises an even more disturbing question. If the demand for these offerings was so constant, so critical to the survival of the world, where did all the cats come from? How could a civilization possibly supply millions upon millions of votive offerings on that scale? The answer reveals a dark, industrial side to this sacred worship, a side where the line between holy sacrifice and commercial enterprise became terrifyingly blurred. To understand this, you have to picture the city of Bubastis not just as a religious capital, but as a sprawling divine metropolis fueled by an astonishingly unique economy. At the heart of this economy wasn't gold or grain or papyrus. It was cats. The demand created by millions of pilgrims all needing an offering for Bastet was so immense that it couldn't possibly be met by chance. You couldn't just hope a stray cat wandered by when a festival procession of 100,000 people arrived. So the ancient Egyptians did what they did best. They engineered a solution. A massive, efficient, and deeply unsettling one. Around the great temple of Bastet, and likely at other cult centers, vast catteries were established. These weren't cozy shelters. These were industrial-scale breeding facilities, managed by the temple priests themselves. Think of them as sacred factories, where the product being manufactured was life, specifically for the purpose of sacrifice. Here cats were bred, born, and raised in huge numbers. Their entire existence, from their first breath to their last, was dedicated to a single holy purpose, to become a conduit for a prayer. A pilgrim would arrive in Bubastis, their heart full of hope or desperation. They needed to ask Bastet for a child, for protection on a dangerous journey, or for a bountiful harvest. The first step was to acquire an intermediary, a messenger to carry their plea to the goddess, and the temple was ready to help. For a price, of course. The pilgrim would approach a stall, run by a priest or a temple-sanctioned merchant, and browse the available offerings. There would be mummified cats of all shapes and sizes, wrapped in intricate linen bandages, sometimes with faces painted on, or with elaborate geometric patterns woven into the wrappings. The more elaborate the wrapping, the higher the price. The pilgrim would make their purchase, hold the mummified cat, and imbue it with their prayer, their hopes, their very essence. This small, bandaged bundle was now a sacred vessel. They would then proceed to the temple and present it to the priests, who would place it within the sacred catacombs, adding it to the millions already there, a physical library of human prayers. The transaction was complete. The prayer was delivered. The goddess was appeased. For centuries, this was the accepted story. The catacombs were seen as sacred burial grounds for revered animals, perhaps temple cats who had lived out their lives in luxury. It was a beautiful, serene image. But modern science, specifically X-ray technology and CT scans, has allowed us to peer beneath the ancient linen for the first time, and the truth it revealed is far more brutal and businesslike. When archaeologists in the late 19th century first stumbled upon these massive cat cemeteries, like the one at Spios Artemidos which contained hundreds of thousands of mummies, they didn't know what to do with them. In one infamous incident, a shipment of 180,000 mummified cats, weighing over 19 tons, was sent to Liverpool, England, not for a museum, but to be ground up and used as fertilizer for farms. It was a tragedy, a catastrophic loss of historical evidence, but the few collections that survived and made their way into museums held the key. In recent decades, scientists began scanning these votive mummies, and what they found was shocking. The vast majority of these cats were not old, revered animals who died of natural causes. Far from it. Analysis of the skeletons revealed that most were very young, between 2 and 4 months old, just kittens barely weaned. Others were a bit older, but almost none had reached full adulthood. They weren't living out long, pampered lives. They were being harvested. Even more disturbing was the cause of death. In many of the skeletons that were well preserved enough to examine, researchers found evidence of cervical dislocation. Their necks had been deliberately and efficiently broken. This wasn't a gentle passing in a sunbeam. This was a swift, methodical culling, a routine part of the production line. The sacred caterers bred the kittens, raised them for a few months, and then killed them to meet the relentless demand of the pilgrims. The purring, playful symbol of the goddess was, in reality, the primary raw material for a massive religious industry. It's a difficult image to reconcile. The goddess of protection and joy, being honored through a system that involved the mass-produced sacrifice of the very creature she held sacred. But the story gets even stranger. The deeper scientists looked, the more complex the deception became. Because as it turns out, a startling number of these votive offerings weren't what they appeared to be at all. When researchers scanned bundle after bundle, they found that a significant percentage, in some studies as high as 1/3, were fakes. Some of these mummies did contain cat remains, but not a full skeleton, maybe just a leg, a skull, or a few random bones, padded out with reeds, mud, and scraps of linen to give it the proper shape and weight. The pilgrim was buying a product that was only partially what it was advertised to be. But it gets worse. An even more audacious scam was afoot. Many of the mummies contained no cat remains whatsoever. They were artfully wrapped bundles of reeds or pottery shards or simple mud, shaped to look like a cat, and then wrapped with all the care and intricacy of a genuine offering. The pilgrim would pay their silver, perhaps going into debt to afford a particularly beautiful offering, and present this bundle of sticks and dirt to the goddess, never knowing it was empty. Now our modern minds immediately scream fraud. We picture greedy priests preying on the faithful, laughing all the way to the temple treasury. And without a doubt, there was an immense profit motive at play. The temples of Bastet were fabulously wealthy, and this industry was a major source of that wealth. But to dismiss it as a simple scam is to misunderstand the ancient Egyptian mindset. It's more likely that this was an open secret, a tiered system of devotion. You paid for what you could afford. A top-tier offering, the most expensive, would be a perfectly mummified adult cat, perhaps one that had lived in the temple itself, with the most luxurious wrappings. A mid-tier offering might be a kitten, and for the poor farmer who had traveled for weeks and had very little to spare, a budget-tier offering, a symbolic mummy containing a few bones or just reeds, was available. To the ancient worshipper, the physical object may not have been the most important part. The crucial elements were the intent, the prayer, and the act of giving. The physical mummy was just a vessel. Whether it contained a whole cat or a handful of mud was secondary to the genuine faith of the person offering it. They weren't buying a cat, they were buying a direct line to their goddess. The object was just the telephone, and the priests were simply the service providers, offering different data plans for different budgets. This completely reframes our understanding of Bastet's worship. It wasn't just a spiritual affair, it was a colossal commercial enterprise, a pilgrimage economy with Bubastis as its Wall Street. The priests were not just spiritual guides, they were entrepreneurs, managing supply chains, production quotas, and a sophisticated, multi-leveled retail operation. They had successfully monetized hope. They had industrialized prayer. This system, this blend of deep faith and pragmatic commerce, flourished for over 1,000 years. It made Bubastis one of the most spectacular and wealthy cities in the ancient world. But empires crumble and religions shift like sand. This massive, intricate machine built around a feline goddess was powerful, but it was not eternal. As new powers rose in the Mediterranean, a new faith began to spread across the Nile. A faith with a single jealous god. A faith that had no place for animal-headed deities and their strange sacrificial industries. The end of this era was coming, and it would not be gentle. The fall of Bastet and her cult was as dramatic and complete as her rise had been meteoric. The year is 391 AD. The Roman Emperor Theodosius I, a fervent Christian, issues a series of edicts that will echo through history. These aren't suggestions, they are commands. Pagan temples are to be closed. Their endowments are to be confiscated. Sacrifices are forbidden on pain of death. For the cult of Bastet, this wasn't a gradual decline, it was a death sentence. The decree swept across Egypt like a desert wind, extinguishing the ancient flames of devotion one by one. In Bubastis, the heart of Bastet's worship, the edict would have landed like a hammer blow. Imagine the scene. The great red granite temple, a place that had throbbed with music, dance, and celebration for millennia, now stands under a cloud of imperial threat. The priests who had inherited their roles through generations are now criminals. The pilgrims who once flocked to the city by the tens of thousands now stay away, fearing persecution. The sacred cats, once the living avatars of a goddess, are no longer protected by divine law, but are subject to the cold indifference of a new world order. The vast, intricate economy built around Bastet, the breeders, the embalmers, the sellers of bronze statues, the boatmen, it all collapses. The music stops. The dancing ceases. The final prayers are whispered in the shadows of the colossal pillars. We can almost picture the last high priest of Bastet, turning the great key in the temple lock for the very last time, the sound echoing in the sudden, deafening silence. The goddess of joy had been outlawed. The protector of the home was now, herself, homeless. Bubastis, the city of jubilation, began to crumble. Without the constant influx of pilgrims and the wealth of the temple, its reason for being simply evaporated. The Nile, ever-changing, shifted its course. The canals that fed the city silted up. Sand, the patient conqueror of all things in Egypt, began its slow, relentless reclamation. For over 1,000 years Bastet slept. Her name, once spoken with reverence by millions, faded into a whisper, then into nothing. She became a footnote in the writings of a few Greek and Roman historians like Herodotus, a curious relic of a bizarre, cat-worshipping people. Her magnificent temple was buried. Its red granite pillars toppled and covered by layers of sand and silt. Her city became a series of anonymous mounds in the Nile Delta, known to the locals only as Tel Basta. The goddess of the morning sun was plunged into a seemingly endless night. The very memory of her vibrant festivals, her protective power, her dual nature as both gentle cat and ferocious lioness, was lost to the world. It was as if she had never been. Christianity gave way to Islam in Egypt, and still Bastet slumbered beneath the earth. Her statues lay broken, her inscriptions unread. The millions of mummified cats in their subterranean galleries were a forgotten secret, a silent, waiting army of the dead. The world moved on. Empires rose and fell. The Renaissance, the Reformation, the Age of Enlightenment, all passed without a thought for the cat goddess of the Nile. She was a ghost, a forgotten myth from a civilization that was itself seen as a land of impenetrable mystery and arcane symbols. Then, in the late 18th century, something changed. Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798 brought not just soldiers, but an army of scholars, scientists, and artists. They began to measure, sketch, and study the ruins of this ancient land, sparking a wave of Egyptomania across Europe. The discovery of the Rosetta Stone and its eventual decipherment in the 1820s was the key that unlocked the door to this lost world. Suddenly, the strange pictures on temple walls weren't just pictures anymore. They were words. They were stories. They were the voices of the past, speaking again after millennia of silence. And among those voices, a name began to re-emerge: Bastet. The stage was set for her reawakening. In 1887, a Swiss archaeologist named Edouard Neville, working for the Egypt Exploration Fund, arrived at the unassuming mounds of Tel Basta. He knew from ancient texts that this was the likely site of the legendary city of Bubastis, but what he and his team found there exceeded all expectations. As they began to dig, they didn't just find a few scattered remains. They uncovered the foundations of a city that had been a major center of power and worship for 3,000 years. And then they found her temple, or what was left of it. Neville described a scene of utter devastation, a giant's boneyard of shattered red granite. Columns, architraves, and colossal statues lay in a chaotic jumble. But amidst the ruin, the glory of what had been was undeniable. They found inscriptions bearing the names of pharaohs from Osorkon II to the Ptolemies. They unearthed huge statues of Ramesses the Great. They found the remnants of the Great Festival Hall, and in their minds, they could almost hear the faint echo of sistrums and pipes. But the most astonishing discovery was yet to come. As they excavated the area around the temple, they found the catacombs. Not just one, but vast networks of galleries, packed to the ceiling with the mummified remains of cats. Neville's team uncovered hundreds of thousands of them. It was an industrial scale of devotion that stunned the Victorian world. They found them in pottery jars, in wooden boxes, in simple linen wrappings. Some were adorned with intricate beadwork, their faces covered with gilded masks. These weren't just pets. They were offerings, messengers to the divine, each one a prayer made solid. The sheer number was incomprehensible. So many were found, in fact, that they were seen as having little individual archaeological value. In one of the most infamous and tragic episodes of modern archaeology, a shipment of nearly 200,000 mummified cats, weighing over 19 tons, was sent to Liverpool, England. They weren't destined for a museum. They were sold for fertilizer, ground into powder, and spread across the fields of English farms. A sacred offering, a link to the goddess, became dust. Despite this tragedy, the discoveries at Bubastis brought Bastet roaring back into public consciousness. Newspapers in London and New York ran sensational stories about the city of the cat goddess. Neville's detailed reports gave scholars the puzzle pieces they needed to reconstruct her story. They could now read the inscriptions dedicated to her, see the art depicting her, and understand the immense scale of her cult. They learned of her transformation from a terrifying lioness into a gentle domestic cat. They rediscovered her role as a protector of women, children, and the home. They unearthed the small bronze statues that pilgrims once carried, each one a personal token of faith. The goddess who had been buried for 15 centuries was being resurrected, not by priests, but by archaeologists with shovels and brushes. Her image began to appear in art, literature, and popular culture. Museums scrambled to acquire artifacts from Bubastis. The once forgotten name of Bastet was on people's lips again, spoken now not in prayer, but with a sense of historical wonder and romantic fascination. This wasn't the same Bastet who had been worshipped in the smoky halls of her temple. This was a new incarnation, a goddess reborn in the modern age, a figure of mystery and allure. The long sleep was over. The rediscovery of her past was just the beginning of her new future. A future that would see her take on roles and meanings that her ancient followers could never have possibly imagined. In this new age, the age of archaeology and empire, Bastet was no longer a living deity to be worshipped, but a curiosity to be catalogued. She was a puzzle box of granite and gold, unearthed from the sands and placed under the sterile lights of European museums. Scholars marveled at the craftsmanship of her statues, deciphered the hymns carved in her honor, and pieced together the fragments of her festivals. They saw her through a lens of scientific inquiry, a fascinating specimen of a dead religion. But what happens when a goddess is unearthed without her instruction manual? When the rituals are lost, the chants are silenced, and the living heart of her cult is gone, she becomes a symbol, a potent but simplified echo of her former self. For the Victorian world, obsessed with the exotic and the macabre, Egypt was the ultimate fantasy. And in this Egyptomania, Bastet found her first modern role. She was the cat goddess, an elegant, mysterious, and slightly dangerous figure. She became a decorative motif, her sleek silhouette gracing everything from Art Deco architecture to cigarette advertisements. She was a shorthand for the enigmatic allure of the ancient world. In this popular imagination, her fiercer aspects began to fade. The memory of the lioness, the avenger of Ra, the goddess who could unleash plagues, was softened. She was domesticated, much like the cat she represented. She became graceful, beautiful, and fundamentally safe. The roar was quieted, leaving only the purr. This simplified image, however, contained the seeds of her future rebirth. As the 20th century unfolded, a new spiritual hunger began to grow in the West. People started looking beyond the confines of their established religions, searching for a more personal, earth-centered, and feminine vision of the divine. And in the dusty museum halls and forgotten texts, they found Bastet waiting. The rise of Neopaganism and Wicca in the mid-century created the perfect environment for her return, not as a historical artifact, but as a living presence. For these new followers, Bastet was a revelation. In a world dominated by patriarchal gods, she was a powerful, independent female deity. She was not a wife, a sister, or a daughter defined by her relationship to a male god. She was a force in her own right. Her duality was not a contradiction to be explained away, but a strength to be celebrated. She was both nurturing and fierce, a gentle protector of the home and a wild, untamable spirit. She represented a femininity that was complex, autonomous, and unapologetically powerful. She wasn't just the goddess of cats. She was the goddess like a cat, self-possessed, independent, and serenely confident. Her domain of protection also took on new, deeply personal meanings. In ancient times, she protected Egypt from its enemies and the home from physical threats like snakes and disease. In the modern world, her protection was sought on a more intimate scale. She became the guardian of the home in a metaphysical sense, warding off negative energy, stress, and emotional harm. She was invoked as the fierce protector of women, a shield against misogyny and oppression. And of course, she became the divine patron of pets. For millions of cat lovers, the bond they shared with their animals was a sacred one. And in Bastet, they found a goddess who understood and sanctified that connection. Praying to Bastet for the health and safety of a beloved pet became a common and heartfelt practice. Her association with joy, music, and dance also found fertile ground. In a fast-paced, high-stress world, Bastet became a goddess of self-care. She represented the importance of pleasure, of taking time to dance, to listen to music, to enjoy the sensual side of life. She was a reminder that joy is not a frivolous luxury, but a sacred act. To light a fragrant candle, to put on a favorite song, to simply bask in a patch of sunlight like a cat. These small acts could be rituals in her honor, a way of connecting with her joyful, life-affirming energy. Then came the internet. The digital age took this burgeoning revival and amplified it 1,000 times over. From temple walls to Tumblr feeds, from papyrus scrolls to Pinterest boards, Bastet went viral. She was perfectly suited for the online world. Her imagery was iconic and easily shareable. Her domains, protection, independence, feminine power, and cats were all incredibly popular themes in online communities. Suddenly, information about her was no longer confined to academic books. Anyone with a search engine could learn her stories, see her art, and connect with others who felt drawn to her. Online shops on platforms like Etsy began selling Bastet statues, amulets, and art, making her presence a tangible part of people's homes. Social media became her new temple, where digital altars were built with carefully curated images and hashtags. Witches on Instagram and TikTok shared spells and rituals invoking her protective power. In a strange and uniquely modern twist, the internet's obsession with cat memes and videos became a kind of unintentional, secular worship. Every time someone shared a video of a cat being goofy, majestic, or comforting, they were participating knowingly or not in the celebration of the very qualities Bastet has embodied for millennia. She became the divine feline for the digital age. Today, Bastet exists in a fascinating dual state. She is still a subject of intense academic study, her history carefully preserved and analyzed by Egyptologists. But she is also a vibrant, living deity for a diverse and global community of followers. The modern Bastet is an archetype, a powerful symbol onto which people can project their own needs and aspirations. For some, she is the ultimate symbol of feminine empowerment, strong but not aggressive, sensual but not subordinate. For others, she is the ultimate protector, a comforting presence watching over their home and family. And for many, she is simply the divine spirit they see reflected in the mysterious, golden eyes of the cats they share their lives with. She has been transformed from a state goddess of a powerful empire to a personal goddess of the individual soul. Her worship is no longer about massive, state-sponsored festivals with thousands of pilgrims. It's about a quiet moment of reflection in a living room in Ohio, a small altar in an apartment in Tokyo, a prayer whispered for a sick cat in Brazil. She has proven to be as adaptable and resilient as her feline companions, surviving the collapse of her civilization, centuries of obscurity, and the radical shifts of the modern world. But this raises a profound question. Is this modern goddess pieced together from ancient fragments and infused with new meaning truly the same Bastet who was worshipped in the temples of Bubastis? Or has a new deity been born, one who wears an ancient and beautiful mask? The question is a profound one, and the answer, like the goddess herself, is a paradox. In one sense, no. The Bastet worshipped today is not the state-sanctioned deity of a Nile Valley civilization that vanished 2 millennia ago. The specific rituals, the grand temples, the intricate political and social functions she served are gone, lost to the sands of time. The context is entirely different. We are not ancient Egyptians. We don't live in a world where the flooding of the Nile dictates survival, and the pharaoh is a living god. But in another, more essential sense, the answer is a resounding yes. A deity is not just stone and ritual. It is an idea, an archetype, a current of energy that flows through human consciousness. And that current, the one that represents fierce protection, sensual joy, feminine strength, and the comforting warmth of the hearth, that energy is undeniably alive and well. The mask may be ancient, but the face beneath it is a reflection of our own modern needs. And it is a face we have chosen to call Bastet. Her modern revival is a testament to this enduring power. It began not in the halls of academia, but in the quiet circles of modern paganism and Wicca in the mid-20th century. As these new spiritual paths sought to reconnect with pre-Christian deities, they looked to the ancient world for patrons. And there was Bastet waiting. For Wiccans, she became a potent symbol of the sacred feminine, a goddess who embodied not just motherhood, but independence, self-possession, and pleasure. They saw in her the perfect balance, the nurturing mother cat who would die to protect her kittens, but also the sleek, independent creature who walks by herself, beholden to no one. She became a goddess of the home, yes, but also a goddess of the dance, of perfume, of music, of all life's sensory joys. In this new context, she wasn't a distant state goddess. She was an intimate, personal protector, someone you could call upon to guard your home, to bless your pets, or to help you embrace your own inner power and sensuality. This new Bastet, the personal goddess, was perfectly poised to leap from niche spiritual circles into the broader cultural imagination. And leap she did. You see her in the pages of Neil Gaiman's seminal comic series, The Sandman. There, she is an ancient, enigmatic figure, a cat who once was a goddess, holding court with the other deities of old. She is portrayed with a quiet dignity and an almost sorrowful wisdom, a remnant of a forgotten age who still commands immense respect. She is a reminder that the world is far older and stranger than we think, and that power can exist in the most unassuming of forms. Then, she exploded into the mainstream consciousness with Marvel's Black Panther. While Bast, as she is called in the comics and films, is a panther goddess, her roots are explicitly in the Egyptian Bastet. Here, she is not just a protector of the home, but the divine patron of an entire nation. She is the source of the Black Panther's strength, the origin of the heart-shaped herb, the spiritual foundation of Wakanda. This portrayal catapulted her into the realm of superheroes, transforming her into a symbol of Black excellence, ancestral power, and Afrofuturism. She became a goddess of social justice, a divine force empowering a hidden, technologically advanced African nation to stand against colonialism and oppression. This version of Bastet is a warrior, a kingmaker, a fierce guardian of her people on a global scale. From comics and blockbuster films, she padded silently into video games. In games like Assassin's Creed Origins, players can walk the reconstructed streets of her sacred city, Bubastis, and see her temples as they might have been. In the multiplayer battle arena game Smite, she is a playable character, a nimble and deadly assassin who pounces on her enemies. Each appearance, no matter how different, adds another layer to her modern identity. She is ancient mystery, she is royal power, she is deadly grace. But perhaps her most widespread and potent modern form is one that requires no sacred texts or blockbuster movies. It's the Bastet who lives on the internet. In our hyper-connected world, we have, as a global culture, become obsessed with cats. We share billions of cat photos, watch endless hours of cat videos, and elevate celebrity cats to superstardom. This is the new cult of the cat, and Bastet is its unofficial patron saint. She has become a secular icon, a symbol for anyone who loves and respects cats. Her image appears on t-shirts, coffee mugs, and tote bags. She is the crazy cat lady reclaimed as a badge of honor, a symbol of independence and a deep connection to the animal world. When we see a black cat and think of magic and mystique, we are feeling the echo of Bastet. When we marvel at our own pet's ability to be both a cuddly companion and a ruthless hunter, we are witnessing the duality that defined her. In this sense, her worship has become democratized. You don't need to be a priest or a Wiccan to feel a connection to her. You just need to love a cat. You just need to appreciate that blend of comfort and wildness that they bring into our homes. This is perhaps her greatest modern transformation. From a goddess worshipped in a specific temple, to a spirit that inhabits every living room where a cat is purring on a lap. So has a new deity been born? In a way, yes. The modern Bastet is a composite goddess, a mosaic built from ancient fragments, pagan reinterpretations, pop culture portrayals, and our collective internet-fueled adoration of felines. She is a goddess for our time, reflecting our values and anxieties. We see in her the strength of the independent woman, the importance of protecting our homes and families, the need for joy and self-care in a stressful world, and a connection to the natural, untamed spirit that we fear we are losing. But this new goddess is not an imposter wearing an ancient mask. She is a direct descendant. She is the logical evolution of a powerful idea. The core essence of Bastet has remained remarkably consistent across 4,000 years. She was and is a protective force. She was and is a symbol of feminine power in its many forms, nurturing, fierce, sensual, and independent. She was and is a bridge between the civilized world of the home and the untamable spirit of the wild. The ancient Egyptians saw this duality in the cats that shared their lives, and they elevated it to the divine. Today we look at those same cats and we see that same mystery, that same comfort, that same quiet power. The rituals have changed, the temples have crumbled, the language is different, but the fundamental human experience of living with these enigmatic creatures has not. And so, the goddess they inspired lives on. Bastet's ultimate story is a story of survival. She survived the religious upheavals of her own country. She survived the rise of new gods and the fall of her civilization. She survived centuries of being forgotten, reduced to a footnote in history books. And now she is not just surviving, she is thriving. She has adapted, evolved, and found new worshippers in a world her original priests could never have imagined. She teaches us that what is truly powerful never really dies. It simply changes form. It waits patiently in the shadows like a cat, ready to re-emerge when we need it most. Bastet is more than just a historical curiosity. She is a living, breathing part of our modern mythology, a reminder that the past is never truly past, and that the gods of old can still walk among us, their faces reflected in our movie screens, their names whispered in our quiet rituals, and their spirit purring contentedly at the foot of our beds. She is the goddess of the sun-warmed spot on the floor, the protector of the midnight hunt, and the enduring power of the divine feminine. Ancient and modern, fierce and gentle, a goddess for their time and a goddess for ours.